Hello, everybody. Hey, hi, Roger. How was the weekend, man? Just working hard.
Working hard. Working at my likeness. I'm stuck, but I will get it.
Well, I'm kind of stuck myself, man. Um,
Phew.
yeah, I'm actually not happy with the model the way I have it right now. But so I did some more work. I mean, like, I was going again more towards like an older guy, and I have like enough old guys in my portfolio in there. So I kind of like decided to make him a little younger, but then kind of like I'm not quite there with what I want to go with him. You know, it's kind of kind of like struggling. But today we're gonna start the detailing anyway, and then I'm gonna keep pushing this thing like as we go and see where he goes. Because since I'm not trying to match any likeness, specifically, it's gonna be a struggle to actually find something that actually find like his character there somewhere. But anyway, let's start this thing, man. We're gonna be doing some HD sculpting today, which is always fun, and we're gonna have to bring some disclaimers first about the pros and the cons about using the HD geometry and how to prepare our model. We already talked about this last time. That was basically, it's like how we prepare the model for subdivision so we can get like the optimal resolution and all that stuff. So, and then we're going to be sculpting some pores today as well. That's going to be the challenge for all of us. And it's mostly, it's mostly about the scale, I would say, like the most important thing. But there are obviously lots of things that are important about pores when you're sculpting them by hand to make it look natural. But we're going to be talking about all of them. So let me just switch to something here. Let me just open, let's see, this one here. So this is basically my own skin. Someone took a friend of mine took a picture of me. And I have this terrible skin in there. But my pores are very, very well defined, which is really cool. So I have like all that little, nasty stuff in there, like the little ingrown hair and everything. But it's like the shape of the pores. If you look for like a macro photography of pores, for example, if you get like like a microscope version of the pore, it's like there's lots of layers. It's a weird kind of thing when you look at like under a super macro. But when you look at this, which is like just a macro photography, right? Like just like a close-up shot. To me, it's a matter of like interpreting how these things look like, more than actually trying to reproduce it correctly. Because like I said from the beginning, it's like everything is about like painting an impression of the skin and not necessarily like, it's like doing like the scientific approach and all, it's like to get like all the layers and all that stuff. It's mostly about like what you perceive, it's like how you perceive the pores when you look at them from a distance like this, for example, right? And the reference that I always make is it's a very silly one, which is this, right? A tufted couch or a tufted sofa. That's basically like the structure I see when I look at those pores here, for example, right? It's almost like they are held. There's a tiny little button in the middle, right? That holds everything inside. So basically like you get that little button in there holding everything. So you get the pressure in there. So you get like all those little rays, right? Like those little things around them that go and they connect to the next one. And obviously what we don't have here in the couch is the macro structure, which is basically the macro breakup. We're going to be working with some bumps we're going to be using to help to break up even further. But there is always like those little rays, it's like those little guys that actually go and connect to the next one. They create this network. And the thing that I normally do as well to illustrate, let me just open this one in Photoshop. Let's get this here. Let me let's see. Yeah, this guy here. And I have some other ones as well from a couple of friends. But this one is the one of my own face. Okay, let's just hide this. Okay, there you go. And open image. Let's bring this one here in Photoshop. So you see, like it's a very intricate little network of things, right? Like it's just like, especially around this area here is normally the most visible part, right? Like around the cheeks. But you see like how interesting this is. But in terms of the distance, right? Like I don't know, I cannot precise, for example, like what's how many pores there are like in a square inch, for example, right? It's something that we can actually try to count. But what I'm gonna do here for now is actually move this. Come on, computer, you're getting a little slow for my taste. Let's see what's going on here. Just move this. This one. Yeah, interesting. I cannot move around. Let's see why. Okay, now it's moving. It's probably maximized. Okay, so let's just zoom in here, and let's just like do a quick and dirty paint over here, so you can see the distance between those pores, which is very weird. I think this is the main point we are gonna make right now. It's about the randomness. So let's get this guy here at, let's try this at maybe 6, something like that. So I'm just gonna do a couple of like paint over like for the pores themselves here, right? So we're gonna look at those guys here. Let's see one area that we can see better. So if I paint one, it's gonna be one right there, the other one's right here, the other one's right there. There's one here, one here, one here, one here, one here. So you see like they have this connection about this network, right? Like they kind of like reach for the next one. There's always like those little things that go to the next one, right? It's kind of like a little pillow, just like in that couch, right? They always like reach into the next one like that. Like little arms, they're gonna go to the next one. But in terms of the distance, you see that they are not like super consistent, right? Like they have some kind of randomness. So when you're sculpting them, one thing that we do normally, it's like that's a common mistake, is that when we see those little things like reaching to the next one like that, we tend to believe that it's almost like a triangle they create, right? And then it's gonna be always perfect like this. And then we end up creating something that the distance between the pores is always very constant. Some people even try to do like a roll brush, for example, that has like something like this, and then like this, and then like this, right? And you see how mechanical this is, right? I mean, like it's like the same distance between them or very similar, and then you try to connect the dots, right? And then they all end up like in those perfectly, triangular shapes at the end. And you see, like in my case here, like in this skin, because they are so kind of random in here, right? Some are smaller, some are deeper, right? But in terms of connecting them, it's not going to create like a perfect set of triangles. You see, like some of them are much bigger than the other ones, right? So it has this randomness that's important to maintain. Like, it's like if I try to connect those guys, like they have like some broad triangles they create in the middle, but not something that's like completely perfect like this. So this is the first thing we're going to have to do, okay? The main thing I see as a mistake when I see skin sculpted is that they are too perfect. It's like all those pores, they read very mechanically, right? And the other thing is the size of them, right? If you look at the skin from a certain distance like this, and I pick like just the bigger ones, you see like this is my entire cheek right here, right? So this is my nose right there, right? And then I have my nasolabial fold in there. So you see like how spread apart they are here, right? So I'm gonna get like those main ones here, like the deepest ones. They have some, a good chunk of distance between them, but then obviously you're gonna get like some secondary ones, some smaller ones, right? But it's fairly, it's fairly distant, but at the same time, this distance has to respect this network I just mentioned, right? In a sense that when you sculpt the pore, it's always like you're going to be sculpting it, but remember that's going to be almost touching the next one, right? So it's like those little rays, they're going to reach to the next one like that. So when you sculpt like two distance, for example, like one here, one here, one here, one here, right? You're two distant. You're going to try to reach and you go as far as this, and then this one's going to go as far as this. It doesn't look natural because like it's almost like you're not creating this little pillow effect here that I mentioned, right? Like that's basically like they have to kind of connect to create like this in-between area that looks a little bit more busy than something that you know, is too far apart. At the same time, if you have them too close, for example, like you have a pore here or here, right? Too close, and then you reach is not going to look natural either. It's almost like it's something in between. Those guys are going to have to reach to the next one, kind of like halfway, and this one is going to have to go kind of halfway. And then in between, you're going to create all those structures that are kind of like mix. You know, it's like you can create those little, there's some crisscrossing that happens sometimes, right? And then obviously with the micro displacement we're going to be adding in there, that's going to help. But it's all a matter of like trying to nail this distance between the pores, right? The best reference I could give you guys is that website we were looking the other day. This one here, right? You guys already have it there, Daniel. And then pick one of the young guys here, for example. And why a young guy and not the older person? Because the pores change a lot. What happens with the pores? Remember, like when I was talking about, so for example, like for this guy here, right? In relation to the size of his nose in here, you can have a very clear idea about like the amount of pores you're gonna need in here, right? So you see, like they're not super distant, right? Like they kind of like they have to, like I said before, they start in the pore and they kind of go and try to connect to the next one. Like this, those ones are very clear right here. Like even when I sculpt them, I call the butthole brush, right? It creates this little butthole in there, and then it tries to connect to the next one. And then after you have all this structure is sculpted, then there's a lot of other things you're going to be starting to observe. You know, it's like there is the randomness of the depth, right? Some of them are very deep, like those guys here. 1, 2. There's another one right there, right? And then some of them are very shallow, right? And we're gonna see when you look at an older person, for example, let's open one here just for comparison. Like this old lady here, for example. What happens, remember like when I was talking about this little couch in here, it's almost like those little dots almost like hold things inside, right? So kind of create this pressure. So create this little pillowy version of it, right? So the skin looks a little more puffy around the pores. In an older person, in certain areas of the face, you're still gonna get this, right? And it's gonna get very abstract, sometimes gets almost like a brain kind of structure. They start like connecting in funny ways, different directions. But for the most part, in areas like the cheeks, where normally like for a younger person is where you're gonna see those pores the most, in the cheeks is almost like this button here gets loose over time. And it starts like losing the ability to actually hold things inside. So it kind of like lifts, and those pores become very, very shallow to the point that sometimes they just disappear completely because of how the skin becomes more and more paper thin. So for example, you start looking at this old lady here, and where you're supposed to see like all the pores, very deep, right? They start losing definition, you know. It's like you still see the crisscross. Like you see like here was probably one right there, another one right there. So you see these little rays still kind of going, you know, and trying to connect to the next one. But the pores themselves, they kind of lose. There's one here I can see, right? Another one there. But for the most part, they become almost like just the wrinkles. It's almost like looking at the top of your hand, right? Like you see like this little triangles and crisscrossing going on, but you don't see a lot of pores. But then when you go some other areas, like the muzzle here, then you're gonna see some deep ones still right here, right? Still some very deep ones around this area. And then they start breaking up, like I said before. You still see them right here, right? The camera is a little bit shaky in there. But then around here, things start breaking in a very weird way, right? Like almost like the little brains that I mentioned. And then it becomes a little bit more abstract, you know. But, and you see like pores we're supposed to be seeing here. they are not as visible anymore unless you go to around here, right? Kind of like under the lips, and then on top of the, around the muzzle right here, right? Still see them. But for the most part, they disappear from the cheeks, right? They become just like texture. You know, it's like it becomes more like micro wrinkles than pores themselves. Although, like I said, you still see a few of them in here, but very, very shallow. They don't have that depth anymore, right? So this is one thing you're going to be using, and you have to consider, for example, if you're sculpting someone very old, right? If you have a very old person and you put like all the pores in the cheeks, for example, sometimes it doesn't sell it because it doesn't seem like it's aged skin, right? It doesn't seem like it's paper thin at that point. For example, the paper thin example I'm using, you can see clearly here, right? In the way that those wrinkles are behaving in here. It looks so thin, right? Like you see all the underneath structures, like the fat deposits in there, you know, and everything looks very thin. And then you get here, it's very leathery, right? So it's a combination, like it's paper thin skin and then some more leathery stuff. So it's very tricky, you know. It's like to sculpt like old people's skin convincingly, because we tend to add like all those pores, you know, it's like we would do with a younger person. So keep that in consideration when you're sculpting your model, if you're going for someone older. In my case here, since I'm going to be more interested in the pores this time, you know, it's like I'm going to try to avoid that. I think it was the class of June. That was Ray Harryhausen, and I was sculpting his skin. I had to remove most of the pores I sculpted for that reason, to create this effect of aged skin. So he ended up like getting much more, much less detail in terms of pores, right? So let's go back around here. So we already spoke a little bit about like the distance, right? So very important to keep the distance kind of consistent, because they have to look like they are part of a network, but not necessarily like perfectly distributed among themselves, right? We're gonna be able to, you know, to sculpt something that looks that like there's an order, but there's some chaos in it as well, right? And then there are certain brushes I'm gonna show you guys. You can sculpt everything, for example, with the same depth. That's basically what I do. And then I go later and do another pass, like pinpointing like a cup of them, every cup of them, and then making that part a little bit deeper, right? And also adding some bumps in between. So like there's lots of bumps and bruises and things like that, micro scars, right? You're gonna be adding. So the skin, like the first pass of the skin, is just like to cover the entire surface, so we have something to work with. But that's in no way just like you know, it's like, oh, we're gonna render now, it's gonna look like skin. There's a lot of different passes we're gonna be doing on top of that, right? So let's talk about the brush itself, right? How are we gonna create this? Let's jump right back here to ZBrush. And then again, like my model, I'm not like in a happy place with it yet. I don't know where this is going. It's younger now, right? And I keep like poking around, and every time it changes, and I don't like something, and then I change again. But for the purpose of what we have to do, which is like to learn how to do some pores today, I'm gonna start sculpting anyway. And then you know, if I need to redo some part, fine. But for now, it's just going to be okay. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to make sure that my model is 100% symmetrical, right? So I'm going to go to my lowest resolution. Under deformation, I'm just going to make sure I can do a smart resim on X, right? So let's go to the one subdivision level more. I'm going to do the same. One more, I'm going to do the same. One more, I'm going to do the same. So now the model should be very symmetrical, right? I hope that model that we saved last week, like with the fixes I did, I hope it's working for you guys now. It's actually, you know, the smart presim is actually working. I tested in Maya. I did a cleanup in there, and it seems like everything was fine, but the only way is to test. But like I said before, you know, like the disclaimer was, don't trust that model too much, because it's a Z-remeshed model for the most part, right? So if you want to create like a nice flow of edges and everything, it would be nice if you actually either started with that model or with your own, and then created something that looks a little bit more organized, right? So first thing I'm gonna do here before you go further, let me just like do a little smoothing, use that little trick that we did last week. which is like create a morph target. Gonna create a morph target right here. And then I'm gonna use the project morph because I just noticed that there's some wobble here because I'm changing the model a lot, right? So I'm just gonna move this stuff around just to create make a little bit more smooth transitions like those, basically like those edge loops, right? Like to get a little bit more rounded and with a nicer flow. Then I'm just gonna do the project morph here. Boom, yep. And then that way we should be in a better shape now. Okay, so let's switch this one back. So in terms of HD geometry, right? One thing to remember is that last week when I mentioned, for example, like make sure that you don't subdivide your mesh to more than 2 million polygons, right? So we are at 1.1 million polygons with my particular model right here. So I could not go further because that would bring me to 4.4 million, right? And that's already too much. So I'm gonna stay around 1 million. So make sure like your subdivision levels don't pass 2 million polygons, right? I would say like 2.5 million, I think it would be acceptable, but 2 million polygons would be an optimal number. So in my case here, I reached 1.1. I'm not gonna subdivide further, right? So all I have to do now to create my geometry, HD geometry, is to switch to this tab here, Geometry HD, right? And you can see here, I have this number that says 1.1 million polygons. And then my total points for the entire scene, I have 2.1 million polygons, right? Because we have another subdivided mesh in there. That's the one that I used before, right? The old guy. That changed quite a lot for, you know, there are a lot of things that I actually liked in this guy better, but eventually I'm gonna try to adapt it, bring some stuff back. But 1.1 and 2.1. So we know ballpark how many polygons we're gonna have to subdivide now. My intention here with this guy, as we calculated in the last class, is probably gonna give me 71 to 72 million polygons when I subdivide HD. So I'm gonna have to pay attention to this because at the end I'm gonna have probably 72 here and 73 in there or something like that, right? So let's go to a Geometry HD and I'm gonna subdivide now. So I'm gonna click one time. It brought me to 5.24. Then again, you see it's not changing anything here. It's just adding more polygons in there. Subdivision level 2, subdivision level 3. So basically what I did here, I got to 71.975 million polygons. So I'm gonna stop right here because I would say like an optimal number for the head and shoulders would be no more than 100 million polygons. You can go a little further if you want, you know, but you can get like pore detail at around like 90 million, you know. In this case here, I have 70 million. I'm gonna have like very nice pore detail, especially in those areas here in the muzzle. But the pores are gonna start getting a little bit faceted around the cheeks. I don't have enough resolution in there to create something totally cool and perfect, right? But it should be fine for me. I mean, like we're still gonna add like the micro bump and all that stuff. That's gonna help a lot. So it's not like I need to go further. If I went further, I would bring this model to 140, 280 million polygons, right? Which is already a very, very big number. I would say like with 280 million polygons, you can have like a full body detail to pore level. Not the whole body, but for example, like if you plan your topology to have more topology in the face and hands, for example, more visible areas like that, you still can have like plenty of resolution for the rest of the body to get like pore detail in other areas. But I would say like concentrate normal like stuff that you see the most, right? The hands and face. But yeah, 280 million polygons, you probably would have a full body full of detail. And that would obviously, you know, it's like you would have to subdivide the mesh and enter HD like multiple times to be able to cover all those areas, right? But at this point here, so you saw that I have like 3 subdivision levels here, HD, and I have another, let's go back to the regular geometry, and another 4 subdivision levels for non-HD, right? So a total of 7 subdivision levels, and it's bringing me to 72 million polygons. So at this point here, it doesn't show me the HD geometry, right? To be able to see it, you have to enter HD mode, and to enter HD mode, you have to press A, either inside of the model, for example, like if I pressed right here, it would create a circle. It would show me HD around the nose in here. And if I pressed outside of the model, I pressed A, it would create a preview and show me everything that was sculpted already in HD, right? It creates a preview. So in this case here, we're going to be working with some polygroups. So why is that? It's because it's easier to just select certain areas, right? And hide other areas. Remember that if you're sculpting a portrait like that and you're not going to see the inside of the mouth, there is no reason to sculpt inside of the mouth if you're not going to see it, right? Now, if you have a smile, then it's a different story. You're going to have to sculpt the areas you're going to see. Or if you're working for a production model, then the model is going to be open and making facial expressions. You're going to probably have to sculpt the inside of the mouth and all that stuff. But in our case here, to save time, we always only going to sculpt whatever we're going to be seeing in the portrait, right? So let's start by going to the lowest resolution mesh. I still have my HD geometry baked in there, right? But I'm going to go to the lowest, and let's look at the poly groups I have in here. So what I did with the poly groups, I tried to keep like, you know, it's like bring those edge loops around the eyelids a little bit more consistent, you know, it's like with a line like that. It's going to be cool if we're going to work with selections later to put the eyelashes in place with XGen. So, you know, make sure that when you have, when you're sculpting your model, that the edge loops are kind of like following a line, right? Like for example, the eyelid, it's consistent across the board. For example, like if you have a poly group, for example, you end the wrinkle right where you have it, right? Like in that little depth in there. So make sure that those things are in place, you know, it's like a little bit more consistent instead of like something that's all wobbly and you know, mushy. So that's the thing I did. And then for the lips, I could do the same thing here. I mean, it's still a little wobbly, but I could potentially actually bring them to a line that looks a little bit more perfect in terms of, yeah, something like that, right? And then obviously this one here, I could actually bring all the way to this area, but you know, it's fine the way it is for the portrait itself. So I know that I have like the inside of the mouth separated. So let's just hide this one here, those models. And then that's basically what I have inside the pocket in there, right? I can actually tweak it and make it more, like make it nicer if I want. Again, like if it's something that's I'm gonna be using, like really seeing the inside of the mouth. But at this point here, the pocket can be anything, right? As long as it's there and it's water sealed. So we see like the amount of polygons I have for the inside of the mouth is pretty considerable if you take into account the amount of polygons in the face, right? So all this stuff here is going to be consuming a lot of polygons in my HD geometry. So, you know, in a later time, I'm probably going to redo this model that I have used as a base mesh and make sure that inside of the mouth, it has a very, very low resolution so it doesn't eat up all this stuff, right, with the HD geometry. But the point here is that we can actually hide this and just completely ignore it when we are entering HD because you're not going to see it. Same for the eyes, the eye sockets. So let's see what we have around here. So let's see the eyes. So you see, like right now, it's like it's all squished in there, and you know, it's like you can always bring this and conform. For example, you can use some projection and conform to the eyeballs themselves, right? You're going to inflate this and then conform to the eyeballs themselves. Obviously, just enough, you know, it's like you don't need to make it like a perfect match because it's all about like the way that's going to be scattering inside, and you're not going to see anything past the eyelid here anyway, right? So as long as it's watertight in there, there's not a lot of, you know, you don't need to be too concerned if it's intersecting with the eyeball. But again, like this is going to be something we're going to be hiding. We don't need that stuff. So let's take a look here. Look at the polygroups again. And then the polygroups, the way they work, as you know, if you go to auto groups, right? Not going to do anything. If you go to UV groups, it's going to basically get split in UDIMs, right? So I probably have 5 UDIMs in here. And then if you go auto groups with UV, then it's going to split into the little islands inside of the UDIMs, right? So everything is split. So that's the one we want. So at this point here, I'm going to, again, I'm going to click Control Shift. I'm going to click around here. Then open a little window outside like that, holding Control Shift, right? Just to reverse it. Control Shift and then open a little window, drag it, and then hide this one, this one, and I'm gonna need the lips. Control Shift every time, and the eyelids, eye bags, and then that's about it. So the eye socket and the side of the mouth are gonna keep here, and I'm gonna press again Control Shift, click and drag here. So that's basically what I wanna sculpt at the same time when I'm using HD. So I'm gonna subdivide, I'm gonna have to go to the highest level, so D, 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 D. So go to the highest level, and I have 616 here. Because I'm gonna be focusing mostly on the face itself and not so much on neck and the back of the head. So I'm gonna just do this, Control Shift, and then Alt, Control Shift Alt. Just around here, I'm gonna just hide this entire thing. And then Control Shift Alt again. Oops. I'm gonna hide this part here as well. So now I have like just a mask, right? It's hollow, doesn't have the inside of the mouth or anything. It's just a hollow mask. So this mask here is ideal, and I have my perspective off as well, right? It's ideal for start sculpting. One thing that I noticed is that ZBrush, when you try to enter HD in any spot, you press, for example, A around the nose in here. ZBrush does some kind of like projection that's almost like a cylindrical projection. So it's gonna create like a circle around the point where I have my mouse, right? So if I have the mouse here and I press A around there in the forehead, it's gonna create this a circle around the forehead right there. And sometimes this the amount of polygons you get it's smaller than the amount of polygons you get from the side, for example, for some reason. I noticed this in the past. And so that's why I always go to the profile, because I know the cylinder is going to be projected from the side. And in this case here is more likely I'm going to get the entire thing in HD at the same time. I'm just going to do a little smoothing here because it looks a little, just smooth a little bit. So we have like a clear canvas for this, for the pores. That's that, okay. So let's do this. So around here in the nose, right? Any place here around the nose, I'm gonna press A. So A. So it's saying like subdividing 27 million polygons. If it says 27, I know you already got the entire thing. Because normally ZBrush, if you're using the 64 version, which is like every ZBrush now, and you have enough memory, I would say 32, 64. 64 would be ideal actually. You're probably gonna get the entire chunk to sculpt at the same time, right? So if I want to see what's HD and what's not HD, for example, like you can notice there's a line in here. So that tells me that inside of this line here, this is all HD geometry I can sculpt right now, 27 million polygons. And this is all non-HD. If I try to sculpt in here, it's not going to do anything, right? It doesn't move or do anything. To make sure you're sculpting just the HD area, you can always click solo around here. So solo. So basically this is 100% HD now. In this point here, because you already did the projection in there and we already enter HD, you can just turn on perspective again. So now I have my perspective back. And everything here is treated as if we don't have HD. Basically, like, it's almost like this is a regular model with, you know, that you can sculpt freely, right? And contrary to what some people think, that's going to be laggy and everything. I'm going to be sculpting here, for example, you're going to see, right? Obviously, I have my my lazy mouse in there, so it looks a little bit laggy. But when you're sculpting the pores themselves, you're gonna notice that it's quite fast. It's like butter, you know. It's like it's good stuff. So before you go further here, you start doing some pores work and stuff. Let's talk about like what are the advantages and disadvantages with HD, just to remember. So disadvantages. Layers, for example, you cannot layer all the HD geometry you're sculpting, right? You can have layers outside of HD, like, you know, little helpers here and there, but nothing that you're going to be sculpting now can be layered. So one thing I recommend, if you're going to sculpt like pores and stuff and you are not sure yet about the depth of the pores or anything, you can always create a morph target right here. So for example, like store morph target, right? And this morph target is going to work just for this session here. We enter HD, so it's going to be working for now. As soon as we leave HD, that's gone. That morph target is not going to work anymore, right? But let's say let's get the single pore in here. Let's say I sculpted a pore in there, or two, or three, right? And then I realized like, oh my God, they are too deep, right? I need them to be a little bit shallower than that, right? You can always, like, since you saved the morph target, you can always go to your morph brush. And now you can put like any, intensity you want in there. Like, let's say like 4. And then you can go and blend them back, right? So you can use this to actually remove things, clean up areas, especially when you're going to be mixing things. You're going to be doing like pores in this area, and you're going to be doing just wrinkles in this area, right? Like in the eye bag. And then there's a transition area that we're going to have to start merging the pores into wrinkles, right? There's an area around here that it's kind of like in between. You start seeing the pores disappearing, and the wrinkles the same, and they kind of like blend together right in the middle, right? And those areas of transition you're going to see in other parts as well, around the sides of the facing here. You're going to see like different types of pores and things, and like more micro wrinkles and things like that in different areas. So you can always use this to help, like, to diminish one thing and come up with the other thing on top, right? So kind of like it's very helpful. So layers, not possible, but morph target, possible, just like temporarily within the session, right? What else? In terms of the disadvantages, if your model, it's all of a sudden, like, it's like the topology you built, the model is broken somehow, right? Like your model is broken, like the model I had last week, right? It was a little broken. If you went all the way and you start doing like sculpting in HD geometry, and all of a sudden you realize that the model has a problem and you want to fix the model, you're kind of screwed, because there is no way to simply like replace the base mesh with a different topology, right? You're going to have to reproject everything. So if you have something that was HD and you need to transfer to another model with a different topology, there are always ways to project any model to any model in ZBrush, right? You can create, for example, like if this model was HD geometry, but you need to project into another one, you can go HD geometry to this area like I did just now, and then you can create another model with different topology, subdivide it HD again, go to the same partitions, for example, just like I did here, or a similar, it's like selection like this, and then you can go HD to that model as well, and then you can project from this model to the other model, no problem at all. The only thing you have to observe is that there is a limit for polygons in there, that ZBrush gets a little in trouble if you pass, like, I would say like 15 million polygons. I would try to keep around like maybe 12, like for, projecting different chunks. So for example, if you have this model here, that's 27 million polygons, right? ZBrush might be just fine to project 27 million polygons to another 27 in the next model. But I would say like try to maybe like just hide half of the model, like the destination model, and then project like half of this, it's like 13 million polygons or so. And then unhide, go to the next chunk, and then project the other 13. Because 27 might be the case that ZBrush is going to process for a while, and it's going to run out of memory, and then you just lost the time, right? So, but it's always possible to actually project HD to non-HD, non-HD to HD, and HD to HD, everything. It's like anything goes, as long as you enter HD for each one of the models you want to try to project. So this is another disadvantage, right? Like there's no way to actually replace a base mesh that has a different topology, right? Now, if the model it's nice and clean, you can always like obviously just like replace the base mesh with a different topology, not different topology, different UVs, and should be just fine, right? That's what we're going to be doing here a lot. Change the UVs and then re-import the base mesh. It should be totally fine. Now, for the advantages of HD, super fast to export displacement maps. Like I said, exporting a set of 5 maps in 8K in here should take us about 6 to 8 minutes, like fully covered in displacement for the entire face. And if you compare that to a similar model at around 71 million polygons, make this 5 to 6 hours or more if you are using non-HD, right? So that's going to be the biggest difference right there. Another advantage here is that everything that you do in HD is going to be baked in high resolution. So if you're painting color, for example, you're going to be doing the albedo all painted by hand, all that information is going to be baked into high resolution meshes, right? So we're going to capture everything in HD. And overall, it's just like the amount of polygons you're going to be able to handle, right? Like in a single model, like I said, you can have like 280 million polygons, all the way up to 1 billion polygons is the limit for HD. But I never passed 300 million. I think 300 is already pushing a little bit too much. But it's pretty awesome because of the, you know, the maps are seamless. You're not going to have to fight or create like some, you know, it's like basically like overlapping banding areas, right? Like to actually mix the maps and things like that. So that's going to be very cool. So let's talk about the pores themselves. The first thing you're going to do, you're going to switch from this model here. I'm going to go to the plane. So plane 3D. And then I'm going to click Make Polymesh 3D so I can sculpt it, right? So I'm going to click Make Polymesh 3D. I'm actually going to move to the side so you guys can see it. Make Polymesh 3D. And then I'm going to create a little plane in here. Valid morph target. No, I don't want that. Just give me a standard here. Okay. Okay. Where is it? Oh, right there. Let's turn on my double side. So go all the way down, display properties. I'm going to click double, right? So now I have the plane in there and I have my perspective. Let's start it off, right? So right there. And let's see what's the topology. So by default, we get like 1,000 polys, right? So let's just subdivide this a couple of times. So Control D, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I got 1 million polygons right now. Right, that should be enough to create like something in there. So when I sculpt the pore brush, so let's just use the pore brush I have already created in here, and let's see how it looks like when you draw it in here. So the intensity is 42, right? So let's just draw it in here. So that's basically what it is. It's not like a perfect thing, as you can tell, right? It's not like a perfect little sun with like everything is the same intensity and the same length, right? And there is some kind of breakups in the middle as well. So a little bit of like micro wrinkles in between. So it's a little random, right? I kind of used one of those pores from my face as a reference, and then he sculpted something that I thought I was seeing, right? And this one, for the most part, it works very well. In terms of the depth of it, this is a visual reference if you want to take a look. That's how much I'm going into the skin, right? So it's not a lot. It's not like super deep. But if you need to go deeper here, you can always use like a, you know, it's like a move brush, for example, and then click this one and just like scale this way, right? So you can get like shallower, deeper, right? You can do that when you're sculpting your plane and have to create your own brush. So that's basically like the reference I'm going to be using here to myself. So I'm going to put on the side in here just as a reference for what I'm going to have to achieve if I sculpt it. So you saw like the visual reference looks like this. Later, you're going to be able to pause it to see, right? You can actually maybe put in a background and copy if you want, or just create your own. So I'm going to keep it right there so I can see a little bit with the perspective like that. Shift S, right? Just to bake it into the screen. And now I'm going to do a Control Z here so it's clean, and I'm going to sculpt in this one. So one thing that's always good to start, for example, is to create this little cone that goes inside, right? Like the main form itself. So I'm going to start doing that by using the elastic brush. Okay, so I'm going to click E. So I'm going to get my elastic brush. And the elastic brush, if you remember, is that one that creates that weird kind of thing right there, right? That we talked about, like if you tweak it to around 30, then you can start, like you can sculpt things without losing the fine resolution details underneath. But in this case here, we're going to be using a different way. I'm going to create a copy of it. So elastic brush, I'm going to just go to brush and then clone to make sure that I'm using a clone version. It's not overriding the original one. And then I'm going to switch from stroke to drag rectangle, right? So it's a stamp now. And then under alpha, I'm going to plug the alpha 39. And then under the alpha menu, I'm gonna click here, and then I'm gonna tweak this curve, something very pointy like that. So now if I try to draw in here, I'm gonna press Alt, I'm gonna draw. That's what I'm getting here. It's gonna be very pointy, as you can tell, right? Because the intensity is so big. So let's do like maybe like 30 or something like that. Let's try it again. Okay, so that's more like it. Huh, I can use some more, right? Let's try maybe 40 something, 45. Let's try again, small like that. Let's see if it's too much. It's a little much. I think you're gonna have to land around 40, something like that. So let's try around here. And then I can play with this the way it is. So the depth looks a little bit, looks good. Yeah, I can actually definitely pinch this area here, so I can actually use inflate. So let's do a inflate in here. And you can go from the inside, just use the inflate, and I'm gonna actually just smooth things out as well. So I'm smoothing around here, and the inflate created that little dot right there in the middle, right? And then now I can actually start like sculpting. I could make this a little bit more broad, for example, right? It's, yeah, I can actually, let's do this. Let's make a little bit more broad. Maybe just like do the inflate in this area here. Small, and smooth it out. And now we're gonna start blocking those forms in there. It's a little square and all, but we can get that to look good. So let's block some forms. So I'm gonna create like that same brush I created the first day, which is basically a copy of the standard brush with alpha 39 plugged, and then with the alpha curve tweaked to have a point like that. And the stroke was tweaked to have lazy mouse at 0.02 for the lazy step, right? So that's basically that same one we created. And then here, I'm gonna block with a very low intensity some of the forms that I'm seeing there. So for example, like I can come with this form here, all the way in. I can come up with another one. Try not to stay too straight, right? Like create a little bit more of a, you know, it's like you can even break up some of them from time to time. I have some breakups in there. So let's see this one here, a little bit more towards the side. Another bit of breakup. And just like with very low intensity. That one actually I broke up multiple times. So it's like anything that looks a little bit more organic, you know, it's like all this stuff here, it's gonna be blending to the neighbors, right? So something like that. And then I have some in-betweens, like I have some lines crossing that we can add later. But this is the main thing right here, right? Like the main, those ones actually look a little bit too straight here. I would avoid to create like this straight line, but it's fine. So let's switch to clay buildup. And then under clay buildup, you can switch to any of those alphas here, like 35, for example. And the intensity I'm gonna keep at 1 or 2. So let's do 2. And then I'm gonna block one of those little guys here. So basically I'm gonna start puffing with a very low intensity like that. Trying not to spread too much, like to go too far with it, right? It's just gonna block just to have this puffiness around there. Same with this. And again, it's like it's a matter of like observing. You can either, you know, it's like look at some of those pictures from that website with all these people from multiple ages, right? Or look at my own pour as a reference or something, you know. But anything that actually looks organic enough. Let me just get more intensity for my smooth. Just get that. And then it's definitely a little butthole. Let's go. And then, you know, you can always add more breakups, like I said before, right? Like just like you can go really on with this thing. I don't think I spent more than 15 minutes or, you know, doing that one when I did it, and I saved it and it worked, and I never changed it. So it's kind of like I'm doing it here, trying to reproduce something that I just like, you know, but it should work, you know. So let's try, see, like I still have like some of this stuff that's going a little bit too much, like there's not a lot of a transition here. So I'm just gonna try to blend this maybe like one subdivision level less, just to make the blending a little bit better. So I don't have like too much of those forms popping. No, I want them to actually really blend very well like that. So now I can actually add a little bit of the inflate again, right in the middle. I'm gonna keep it like 1, 2, or 3 for the intensity. I'm gonna inflate right here. So it creates this very nice little creases in there. And then I can go back to my carve brush, and now I can start like doing a couple of things. I can do like, have some of those, the more like the sharper lines, kind of blend around there, and then come a little bit sharper like this. Add a little breakup. And then from time to time, instead of like using this very sharp line like this, you can actually grow the size of your brush. For example, like I'm using size 39, I'm gonna grow it, and I'm gonna reduce the intensity. And then I can come up with like broader forms. For example, like something like this, you know, just break things up. It's a little bit deeper. So let's see, 6. And then around there. Blend those areas, make sure that it ends like in a fading, right? So it's kind of like nicer. So now, let's pretend like you guys spend enough time and you're happy with that at some point, right? Like something like this one, I could push a little bit further, but just to get an idea, that's kind of like what we're going for. So let's create this little brush in here and see how it turns out. So from the side, again, like the depth is not big, right? It's not like huge, just enough like that. And then obviously if I want to go a little further, again, like you can always use the move brush and then like scale it, right? Just get like deeper like that. But that's not the case. I'm gonna keep something around this. Maybe it's already a little bit too deep. I'm gonna just bring it back just a little bit. And then from this angle here, you can even use the move brush, you know, so I can and make things a little bit sharper if you want. Then switch to the other angle, do the same. Make a little nicer transition or something like that. A little bit more of a curve, right? Kind of fades better. And then, so I have that one now, right? So let's create an alpha now with this thing. So let's do a Control-N to remove the other one. And make sure you have your perspective off, right? So I'm gonna just go and I'm gonna create, gonna zoom in right here. It's not perfect, right? Like it's lots of room for, you know, refinements in here, but for our example, it's gonna work. So if I have this brush around here, right in the middle of the screen, there's always like a way, obviously, you can just like go to your alpha and you can just say like grab dock, right? In that case, you're gonna grab the alpha, gonna look like that, right? In this case here, if I wanna zoom in and actually create a crop that represents more like just this area here without, you know, it's like too much of the white area around, I'm gonna use a very old school brush here that's called MRGBZ grabber, this guy here. And basically it's gonna ask me to switch to 2D mode, right? Like, which is like, it's a 2D kind of 2.5D brush. So I'm gonna click, in this case here, I'm gonna try to find like the middle of this whole thing. And if the middle is in here, which probably is not, probably like is a little bit offset, but you can press like the left button of your mouse and then Control and actually Shift. So left button and Shift as you drag, right? So you're gonna create this little square. And then I can go as far as I want, for example, if it's around here, and then I can just release it. And now we already created the crop for me in there, right? And then this guy here can just like texture, just like ignore it because it's capturing everything, including texture. So I just need the alpha, right? So now let's switch back to our plane. Around here, I'm gonna press Control N to clean it up again. And then let's try to make a brush out of that. So let's switch to standard. And then under standard, I'm gonna just click a brush and then clone, right? So I'm gonna create a clone version of it. So it's standard 2. And then I'm gonna switch to drag rectangle. And under alpha should be the latest one. So this one here is the one we just got, right? And then if I drag straight away with intensity that's in there, it's probably gonna look a little weird. So let's try that. See, like, it's not the intensity I want, and there is this, it's bulging out, right? You can see it's bulging out. If I make the intensity higher, you're gonna see the bulge get even bigger, right? So the first thing you're gonna do, you're gonna remove, if you press the right button, your mouse, the focal shift are gonna bring all the way down to 0. That's the first thing you're gonna do. So when you draw now, you're gonna see there's a square, right? It's not gonna bulge, it's gonna create like just this square around like that. But with the one that's square, we want it flush with the surface, right? So now we're gonna have to play with a couple of values in here. So you're gonna go to your alpha, and you're gonna notice there's a bunch of different controls in here. And one of them is the mid value, right? So let's click, let's just dock this so it's easier for us to see. So let's click this one. I'm gonna dock it right here. And you're gonna be observing this little, you know, it's like, or here, you can observe here as well. So if I change this, the mid value to something like, actually, let's skip 0 for now. Let's add some radial fade, okay? So when I added the radial fade, you see what's happening in there? So basically, like, everything goes dark outside, and then inside you can see like there is how far the radial fade is affecting it, right? So it's gonna create something that's very, very sharp like that, or something that fades away and leaves just a little bit of the form in there. So now if you leave it something high, for example, like 0, like a 30, just for now, you can play with the mid value now, and you're gonna start seeing that I'm actually adding more and more color around it, right? Until I find one value that's actually pretty close to the middle part, which should be around like 90 something. Let's try 95 to start with. And I'm gonna turn off my radial fade completely. So let's try to draw in here at 95. You see, like, that big step now is a much smaller step, right? Let's try to increase this 90, 98. 98 is basically perfect. I don't even have to use the radial fade. But if you need to, I mean, like, even if it's a step that looks a little bit, for example, like instead of 98 was, let's say, 97, right? And you could not get something that was more perfect than that. You see, like, there's a little line in there, right, showing up. You can always use a tiny bit of radial fade. Let's try like 3. So yeah, it's still like, I need to blend it further, I guess. Let's try 6. So that helps a lot. You still see a tiny bit of the line, but it's very well blended, you know? If you have all the pores in place, it should be fine. But in that case, in this case here, we got to 98, which was pretty much perfect. So I can turn off the radial fade, right? And now I have my little pore in there. And the depth is pretty good, right? It looks like this. So, so at this point here, we have our first pore brush in there. And now we're gonna have to play with the distances, obviously, and the sizes and all that stuff, right? What I was saying before is like this. This is a very common mistake. You have like your skin in there, and you're gonna be doing something like this, very tiny, and then the other one's gonna be around here, very tiny, right? I noticed this, like some of my students did this kind of stuff in the past. That's no good, right? Now, if you have something like this, and then the next one is right here, and the next one's right here, that's no good either. It's too close, right? Now, if you have something that's like this, and then you have something probably around here, that you see like those little arms gonna start trying to connect to the next one, right? And then the other one is slightly offset, so it doesn't need to be perfect around there. And the other one's slightly offset around there, right? With semi-consistent, distance, but not perfect, right? Always a little bit offset. Then things start working a little better, right? Because right in the middle here, in between all those things, we're going to be using our macro displacement or macro bump, and then we're going to be covering this entire area here with very interesting detail, right? So one thing I'm going to do here now, just to show you what I mean, like with the macro detail, is this. There is a brush that I create here. That's you can recreate it in there as well and save it. So you always start with the standard, right? Like just grab the standard brush. So let's do one from scratch here. So standard, and then brush, clone. And I'm gonna switch to alpha. There's this alpha 58 that comes with ZBrush. Right, I'm gonna click that guy. And then there is the where is it? The contrast here. You can actually increase the contrast. You see like it gets a little bit more, gets sharper. So we get a little bit more contrast, like 1.2 or something like that. And then now if I try to draw around here, let's see what it does. This is kind of effect, right? It's kind of interesting. So if I go to the Z sub, I'm gonna reduce the intensity. It's very linear, right? But if you do like a, let's see, let's switch this to spray. That's more interesting now, right? So if I do like if I use the spray, but always going the same direction, you get this kind of effect, right? Like kind of like add some directionality, always using the same direction. But as soon as you switch to doing like circular motions with your arm, so if you look at the video there, you're gonna see my arm doing this, look. That adds this very leathery kind of effect, right? So this is the kind of stuff we're gonna be using actually in Maya, right? Like you're gonna use like kind of like a fractal version of this, right? You're gonna add that kind of stuff, but it doesn't stop you from adding anything here in ZBrush if you need to, right? So if you want to do this, you can go around here, for example, and just break up things further in between. Just make sure that obviously it's not like overriding things too much, right? So it's almost like you have to be a little bit on the bigger side of things, not too big now. Let's see. And also one thing you can play is like you see like right here, I have the flow at 0.25. I can actually increase the flow. And so in this case here, it's gonna add more of that for me. Let's see what's the settings I have for the pre-made one I have here, so you can actually take a look. Let's see, stubble, random, skin random, this one here. So let's see the settings for my spray. So 0.25, oh, earthquake. Holy smokes. Uh-oh, earthquake, man. It just stopped. Jesus, that's a new one. It's a little shaky still, let's see. You see the window?
That's normal.
Yeah, here in California, it's pretty normal, but it sometimes can be very tricky, man. Yeah, I felt, my wife just texted me, earthquake, yeah. There's like two types of earthquakes that we feel here a lot. One is like this. It's almost like someone grabbed your entire house and shook like very fast like that. So that one is kind of scary. But there's another one. It's almost like someone grabbed your house and start like moving in circles like this. And that's the one we felt. Like the last one was this gigantic motion, man. That one was freaky, you know. But this one was not bad. But you definitely saw the windows here shaking. Anyway, this is the first one in my classes, so funny. Anyway, we're all safe. Kids are sleeping. So yeah, so this one here, for example, like is the same, but let's say for my settings, I have like 0.5, scale 1, colors 0.5, and then fluid 0.25. I think that's basically the same thing. And then yeah, so basically like this is the kind of like leathery effect that I get, you know. So this is gonna basically like gonna be using in between this, normally with a little procedural shader we're gonna be using. So we're not gonna have that kind of stuff. And then obviously, once you have a combination of this plus the pores and plus some bumps and bruises in the middle, then things gonna look much, much better, right? You guys are free to ask questions at this point. Like, I'm gonna keep like showing more brushes and stuff and more variations, and then start working on the model. But please just, yeah, feel free to ask.
Chris.
Yeah.
Have you ever tried to use the surface button right beside the mid value?
The surface, which one?
The surface button right beside the mid value one.
Oh, this one here.
Yeah, kind of gets you in the ballpark of the pore, the deep of the pore.
The depth of it.
Yeah, kind of gets you in the ballpark.
I never used
instantly.
Oh, really? I never used that one. It's kind of like so you're saying like the mid value, I don't need to play with it. You just use that one and it gives you
just press and then magically works.
That's amazing.
Me, actually.
Yeah. See, let's try that. Let's see.
Try that.
Yeah. So I have my standard 2 here. So what I have is I have the 98 here, right? So you're saying like I'm gonna ignore that. I'm gonna press surface.
It kind of gets you in the ballpark.
Yeah, it gets pretty close. Yeah, it still needs a little tweak, right?
Yeah, but when you don't get any idea of what
I see.
You're using, and just
yeah, that's yeah, exactly. Like so, I had 0. When I press it, it goes to 95, which is like the first guess that I had. That normally that's the number I go to, and then from that point on, I have to tweak it. So yeah, it's kind of like a shortcut, right? It's kind of like if it tries to find like a closed number for you. That's pretty cool. Yeah, but in my case here was a 98 would be the ideal. Let's see, 98. Yeah, 98 does the trick. Okay, so those are the first like 2 brushes we're gonna be talking about. We're gonna be using probably like, I would say, man, like probably like 10 different brushes, and that's about it. It's not a lot of stuff. It's just that we can add a lot of variations with very few shapes. So the other one I have here is this guy here. Check this out. There's a brush here that I created. Oops, this guy. Let's see, pore. Multi-porous. Yeah, pimple elastic. Oh, pore depth, this guy here. So this guy here is basically like a elastic brush, as you can tell by the icon, using the drag rectangle plugged into it. So just remember, like always create a clone before you start tweaking, right? And then for the alpha itself, it's, if I'm not mistaken, it's like 35 or 36, one of those two. And then the alpha, it's tweaked to have a little bit of a point like that. So what this brush does is basically like similar to what we used to create the main pore before, right? That was reversed like that, right? So it's just like it doesn't have a lot of depth. It's just a little bit. So what I do with it, after I have my array of pores sculpted in the face and everything, I go, for example, in some of them, and I just click and drag inside of it like that, right? So you can add more depth in a few of them. So you can just like pick a few of them and just add more depth. And even like in between, if you want to add a little bit of, you know, like some semi pores in there, you know, it's like you can use as a variation stuff, but they normally use just for the pores themselves. So you can just pick like this one, just drag, right? So you have like that kind of like pore, which basically like is doing this, right? But because it's elastic, that's the whole thing about the elastic, right? Like it doesn't destroy the sculpture that was done. If it was like a standard, that would completely erase everything. But this guy just helps to add like different depths, right? So that's the third brush you're going to be talking about today. So very easy to make, right? Elastic, drag rectangle, plug an alpha in there, and then tweak the alpha to have a little point like that. And then pressing Alt, you get that. Not pressing Alt, you get that. You can even use like for some pimples and things like that if you want to, right? So the other one is similar to this one. Is also using elastic. So let's see if I have a skin. Skin random, skin wrinkles, let's see. Stubble. Yeah, I can look, let's see, neck pimple, antro pimple, pimple elastic, this guy here. Same thing, so elastic, right? Just have a little bit, like the fall off is a little bit different, right? So instead of like having a point, it has more of like, you know, it's like it's a little bit sharper around it. So basically, like it's probably like alpha 30, I would say like always like around, it's either 35, 36, or 39 that I use. So it's one of those, probably 36. And then the difference is that the curving here, instead of like coming to that point, I'm creating this kind of like a, you know, like round bulge in there. That's why it's creating this kind of effect in there. And then you can use like for, you know, multiple things. You can go inside of pores. Once you have like, you know, it's like everything is sculpted with the micro detail and everything, then you can actually go and add underneath, right? It's not going to destroy anything. It's just going to add more complexity to it, which is really cool. And then the thing that I didn't speak about is the alpha I created from an array of alphas, right? So I have my pore brush in there. And let's say you guys went ahead and you did a bunch of you know, it's like you create a bunch of pores like that. And then you're happy with the way it turned out. And then, you know, it's like you create everything like in a circle right in the middle. So the same way I capture the screen right here, right? You can do the same with an array of pores and capture that and transform it to another set of brushes. So that's what I did with this guy here. It has the multi-pore, this one here. So this, for example, is an array of pores just put together, right? So this guy here saves me a ton of time because sometimes I want to sculpt like areas like, you know, the sides of the face or, and even like some other areas, more hero, sometimes I use it. But for the most part, if it's a very hero area, like the cheeks, for example, I try to do like one by one to make sure everything has the right distance and all. But this one for secondary areas, like could be like chin and stuff like that, it's very easy to use as well. So the thing that I normally do to apply it, let's switch, since we're just demonstrating this thing, let's go and switch to our actual model. And then let's do a little sculpting, since we already passed the plane thing. So I'm gonna, the whole reason for me to ask you guys to keep everything symmetrical all the way to this point is because I want to make sure you guys are saving a good chunk of time, like you know, with the pores detail. And then once the face is covered with the pores, even before the wrinkles, for example, right? You can already break up the symmetry. And then for the wrinkles part and all that stuff, like all the customization and changing of pores and adding more asymmetry and everything, then you can do asymmetrically, you know. But like to cover the face with stuff, the best way is to just like keep symmetrical so you save yourself a lot of time. So I'm gonna keep everything symmetrical here, and I'm gonna start doing like my first pass on the cheeks. And this one is a very important one, okay? This one is the one that's gonna define if this is gonna work or not when it comes like to the distance between them. I'm gonna close my couch in here, my sofa, and let's look at the reference for like this guy here. Let's look at this guy here. There's some good pores in there. And we're gonna just like try to compare in relation to his nose. I'm gonna try to get the similar density. So I'm gonna keep that one on the side. And yeah, like nailing this this first pass is important. So I'm gonna start with this array in here. I'm gonna be very lazy today. Instead of like sculpting one by one, let's do this so I can try to get like a ballpark in terms of size in relation to the size of his nose in there. I would say something around there doesn't look too bad. But then obviously again, let's take a look at that. Yeah, that's the size of his nose right there. Yeah, it doesn't look too bad. So if I have something like this to start with, then I can go let's see. I can actually use a little trick here that I did in the past. That's gonna save me a lot of time. I mean, like in the past, like if you look at the previous videos, I was sculpting one by one here. I'm doing this just to show you guys another way to do it, just in case if you want to save yourself some time, right? But you have to make sure that the individual ones are working nicely, right? First, you see the way that are working there. So like there's a distance, right? But there's some asymmetry as well. Like this guy's here is smaller, right? And they're not like a perfect distance between them. There's like closer ones and a little bit more distance. But the important thing is that in between them, you see like that they go towards each other and nothing is like empty space, right? There's always a little bit of those little arms in there, the little rays kind of like right in the middle covering that area. That adds that little impression that everything is very pillowy and soft in the middle, right? It's important to create this effect. So it's another, visual reference for you guys if you want to, use this one, for example, as a visual reference. And since I gave the other one, and then, for example, like how to create like the in-betweens, right? So for example, like if I have something this size here, I want to make sure that the size is consistent across the rest of the model. So what I can do here, I can just press my space bar and increase the size until I have something that it's exactly the same size of the entire thing, something like that, right? So kind of like it has the same size of this, like the red area has the same size of the whole thing. So if I go to the side here without changing the position of the camera, just around here, I know that if I draw around here, that's the edge right there where everything was going to connect, right? So I can actually go and draw it. And I should have something that has a very similar size right there. Same thing around here. So I can actually use that as a guide right there. And I'm going to draw something like this. You should have like a very similar size as well. So now I covered that entire area, right? So let's switch to the single pore, which my students from the previous classes nicknamed Singapore. So the Singapore, which is this one. Let's see, this one here. I make sure that I'm using like the same pore that I used before, right? Like to sculpt, like to create this this array. I use this pore here, which I'm going to be using individually now. So let's see if the depth is correct, because if it's not, I'm going to have to do a little fix. So it looks kind of correct. Let's see, maybe like 40, something like that. And now I'm going to add some in-betweens here. Again, I try not to get too automatic with too like the distance, keeping a little bit more random, right, in between. So I'm gonna just fill up these gaps in here. Trying to be consistent, but also a little random. And then, yeah, just like fill up those guys. And then that way, you see, like I save a ton of time just like by switching to Geico. No, I mean, I'm not sponsored. Yeah, save a lot of time just like, cheating your way with some arrays, you can do that. And but like I said before, like in the previous class you're gonna watch in there, I did a lot of this entire area here actually done by hand. And when you do everything by hand, I would say like it takes about, I would say with some experience in there, probably like 8 to 10 hours to cover the entire thing. But if you don't have that time, right, or you want to, speed up things for yourself, it's nothing wrong about, doing like, it's like doing with a little shortcut right there. So at this point, like this entire area is kind of covered right there, right? I don't have any variation, so it's gonna look very, kind of like mechanical. But then let's do a little bit more of that. Let's cover this area here. And then we're gonna start doing a little bit of variation so you can see what I mean. So let's switch to this guy here again, to the multi-porous. And the muzzle area is important, right? Because right in the middle, we're gonna have to make everything asymmetrical so it doesn't catch your eye very easily. And here, I'm gonna actually make sure that I have a similar distance between them as well, right? Otherwise, it's gonna get like, tiny like this in this area and then huge in the other area. It looks a little weird. Although for the muzzle area, I tend to make the pores a little bit closer than the cheeks, just because that area is more stretched, like there's the form's a little bigger in there. But very slightly. Let me just like do it again. Maybe a little bit. If you're OCD, it's like, just forget about it, man. Just don't be too OCD about it, because it has to look a little bit random, This kind of stuff, like, it really doesn't sell if it's too precise. So I'm gonna just do this. And then this area here, I don't know if I can get away with it. I'm probably gonna, let's do this. Let's, since we have the morph target saved, let's cover this entire thing here. Like so. Make sure that the blending there is not too bad. And then I can just like blend back like the middle area. So let's morph this. And I can actually do a better job just like doing manually those pores. So let's do Singapore. And then off with my symmetry. And let's start poking some of those guys. And then this is the kind of thing that's you have to go totally zen with it, right? Like, it's like you need to have your favorite music playing. This is the kind of stuff like you have to really zone out to do, It's like, because if you're thinking about it, this is suffering right there. And you don't want that. You want to make sure you're having fun with the process, So if it's something that you can, have some music playing in the background, this, like, to me, is like, it goes like very, very easily these days. And I mentioned, like, before to in another class that I get so focused doing work sometimes that sometimes I have the same song playing in loop for like 2 straight hours or 3 straight hours. And I know that's bothering me, but I just cannot move, It's like, I'm just like in the zone in there, and I just like, I live with it. So yeah, this is the kind of thing that you really have to zone out. And, it's like, it becomes like almost like a meditation kind of exercise. You're just like, whatever, it's going to take some time, but they're going to get there. And then obviously this is just like the first pass, right? Everything is going to be like tweaked later, and then all the variations going to be added and all that stuff. And then that's going to be like the more creative part. But this part here is actually, if you have a monkey in your house, you can teach the monkey how to do it, and then go get some coffee. When you come back, the monkey's done.
Hey, Chris, I got a question.
Yeah.
Mudbox has this brush. It's the amplify brush.
Like,
whenever you go, like, you hit your mesh with that brush, it'll make the valleys deeper.
Oh, yeah.
And the peaks higher. Is there something like that in ZBrush?
I wish I had the answer, man. I think someone asked me that before, and I have no idea. I don't think there is, actually. But that would be very, very helpful.
Yeah, I've seen people have made macros or something, but it wasn't quite the same.
Right? Like, that would be awesome. Like, to reduce stuff and increase. Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah, for your randomization stuff.
Yeah.
Pretty sweet.
Yeah, I mean, like,
there's a tool by Ryan. There's how'd you call it? There's and it's a free tool. It's on Gumroad. It's called Ryan's tool. It's a plugin, Z plugin.
Yeah.
And it does exactly that. Like, it can take your entire model and really emphasize all the pores that you have,
Uh-huh.
or dull them completely.
And you
And
can
I
do,
think it's sort of,
you can do selectively as well, like create selections and stuff.
I believe so.
Uh-huh.
It's quite a like there's it's sort of like a Swiss Army plugin, but it has that brush.
Yeah.
I'll post a link in the chat.
Oh, that's awesome.
Thanks, man.
Yeah. Yeah, I never tried that one. Yeah, Ryan, what's his name again? It's like
It's called Ryan's Tool.
Ryan's Tools. Okay. Yeah. That's pretty cool. Yeah, like every single time, man, we learn different things because we use different tools, right? Like, and some of you guys are much more curious than I am these days. I mean, like when I was not working with in the industry, I was always pushing, man. I was like always poking around with stuff, and especially like in Brazil, you know, it's like most people don't speak English, right? So we are just like pokers. We just like poke every single button and see what it does. And then back in the day, I used to learn so much stuff, always coming up with stuff. But then you get like into the industry, and you don't even have time to research anymore. You're just like in this wheel, you know, it's just like trying to get stuff done. And that's the thing that's I tell people, you know, sometimes like they're so avid to get to the industry, and I say, you know, your soul is gonna get a little bit sucked into that thing, you know, if you want to explore and do more research and come up with cool stuff. I think this is the moment right now before you get to the industry, unless you get like to, you know, to some place that really emphasizes this thing about researching, which nowadays is getting more and more rare because it's really like you know, it's like you're like a little hamster in the engine in there, and then we just have to get stuff done, you know. But I wish I had more time to do research for sure. So I appreciate like all the input you guys, you know, I learned stuff and I was like, oh, that's cool. The whole thing about the Z-Wrap, by the way, that I forgot to mention, uh, you guys, if you guys need the license for the Z-Wrap, I mean, like, I know that some of you guys are already using it, but if you need the license, I got 30 licenses for us. So I have all of you covered. So whoever doesn't have it yet, if you need the license, I believe like he gave access for a year. So the license should be good for 1 whole year, right? It's not commercial license. It's just like, you know, the student license, but it should be completely functional for you guys. So you guys can either like text me or just send me an email. Like, you know, it's like I need a license or something. And I have to pick like selectively, you know, it's like I just like put in a list and then make sure I don't send the same license to two people, you know. But it was very cool. The guy actually, he said, you know, I'm going to do something else. I'm going to give you 30 licenses. I said I had 28 students. And he said, and I'm going to give you a lifetime, not the Z-Wrap, like the actual, the main program they have, right? He gave me a lifetime version that he said like you can use professionally, this one. I was like, that's so awesome, man. So like, it was super sweet. And I said like, dude, I'm going to do my best to actually, you know, it's like use the software every time we need to use it. And he said the only thing I asked from you and your students is that when you do any work with it, if you can post with a little tag on Instagram or something, so at least I can actually use that work, you know, it's like to help promote my product, obviously. So I definitely going to do that, and if you guys can do that too, that'd be awesome. The guy was super cool, man. He was very, very generous. And I still have to install it, but yeah, please let me know and I can send you a custom license for sure. So you see, like, just like talking and doing some work here and using some array of brushes, array of pores in there. You see, like we cover a ton of stuff, right? Like I said, like if you're sculpting one by one, all the pores for the entire face in symmetry, that's probably, I would say like between 8 and 10 hours. But then if you're doing it with arrays like this, that's gonna save you a ton of time. So just to remember, right? Distance between the pores, try not to make too even, right? Create some kind of variation in there. Don't forget to save a morph target if you want to actually tweak things in depth and blend things, right? Before you start sculpting in HD, just save a morph target. Actually, every time you start HD, you create another morph target just to have as a buffer in there. And then make sure you compare, especially the first pass, I would say start with the cheeks and compare with the picture, right? And make sure that the proportions, you know, the scale, it's close enough to what you're seeing there. Because if you have this, like if you get it wrong around here, then it's basically like redo, you know. There's no way to actually just like, okay, let me make smaller now or bigger. There's no way, right? And then using that one as a reference, then what I mentioned is that for the muzzle area, for example, I use a little bit tighter, but not by much. Just make sure you don't have something that's like gigantic, like not this guy. Let me get this guy here, multi-pores. Make sure you don't have something that's gigantic like that. And then you come to an area and just make this, right? That makes no sense. So it has to be consistent, right? It can be a little bit different in terms of scale, but it has to be consistent enough that you can see that's part of the same network, right? And then there are a couple of things we're going to be experimenting probably tomorrow, which is going to be like, okay, we're going to start actually connecting dots in here. And by that, I mean, like when you have a wrinkle, let's do a little bit of that today, actually. Let's do around the nasolabial because we have some time. So let's do this. Single pore. Single pore. Okay, so let's fill up this area here. Make sure I have symmetry on. Yep. So I'm gonna do some of those guys here. And the connecting the dots I mentioned is that in your skin, what's gonna happen is that the skin is gonna follow the path of least resistance. So that means that if the skin is gonna bend somewhere, it's gonna find those holes, and that means the pores themselves, right? And it's gonna try to actually fold around the pores. So when you're creating wrinkles, instead of like crossing, you know, it's like drawing across the pores without taking the pores themselves in consideration, we're gonna start actually using the pores as a guide to create the wrinkles. So basically, like you're gonna be connecting some of those little pores together, and then once you connected enough of them, you can actually switch to the next row and keep connecting again. So that means like you're going to be creating some breakups in between. Instead of like having a very mechanical line, you're going to have some lines that actually read a little bit more organic, right? So it's going to be like the wrinkles, instead of like having a very, very long line, they're going to have like a semi-long line and then a break and then another one, and then you're going to get the wrinkles in place. So at this point here, when I'm drawing those pores, you're not seeing what I'm doing here, but I normally do like a little bit in a random way. So for example, like if I'm drawing this pore here, I'm gonna click and drag down. The next one is gonna click and drag up. The next one, click and drag left, right. I keep doing this so they actually rotate, spin a little bit, you know. It might be overkill, but I got used to it, you know, and now it's automatic. So every time I'm placing one by one like that, I'm placing in a different angle. So like diagonal to diagonal, up, down, left, right. So basically that's what I do. It's actually good for your wrist as well, you know, it's like just breaks a little bit of the rhythm. And this is another thing for you guys to think about. Like it's very important, your health is very important, right? And you see like I sit down like you know, like an ogre. I mean, like I don't care too much about my back or anything like that, but I suffer with that stuff. But stuff that I suffered the most in the past was actually the wrist, right? And that's why I switched to this type of mouse in here. It's like a vertical mouse, you can see. So basically, like my hand, instead of like being like parallel to the table, it's actually I rest like the side of my hand, and then I click like sideways. Basically, this is very helpful because if you add any pressure to your tendons, right, like you have it constrained, it can be the tendon or, for example, your elbow constrained to something. At some point, something's going to start hurting, you know. So if you can rest like to the side, just like when you draw, right, you rest the side of your hand on the table. The same principle, you know. And the other thing, like if you can get Cintiq, you know, it's like it's always very good to have you see like my arm is floating, so it's not like held by anything. It's completely free, and I'm sitting basically like the side of my hand. So that's very healthy for you if you want to plan to do this for a long time, you know, especially like I said, like doing pours like this, it can take hours and hours. So make sure you guys don't strain your arm, you know. It's like if you're youngsters out there, it's not gonna make too much difference, you know. It's like brand new machines. But as you get a little older, man, like everything starts hurting. I used to skateboard like for 10 years of my life in Brazil. And then I got hurt, man, all the time. Of course, like ankles all like bad. And then after some time, it's just like, you know, it's like you just deal with the pain and you get better. And then it's like you feel good enough to skateboard again in a few days, right? And you recover very fast, actually. But then later in life, man, all those pains come back to haunt you, you know. It's just like, that's what they say with gymnastics as well, right? The gymnasts, those guys, like they do all those things, and then later on in life as older people, like their joints are like, feel like crap because of like all the impact they have in their joints, right? So yeah, that's the thing, you know, it's like there are certain things we can do when you're young that definitely gonna feel when you're a little older. So be conscious about that when you're sculpting and posture, or you know, it's like especially hands and stuff, because if that's your passion, you know, it's like there's nothing worse than a health issue that can take you out of that, you know. Then it's just like, it's very frustrating. So yeah, we did a lot of work in here, so we covered a good chunk of space. So let's do a little bit of wrinkle work here. So for the wrinkles, same thing, like I use that little, I actually create this little icon in there. You can, you know, there's tutorials how to create the icon, but that's basically, it's a standard brush using the Alpha 39. Same thing, using a very pointy curve. And then for the stroke, same thing, 0.02, right? So it's that very pointy brush like that, right? I'm gonna add a little bit more pressure here. Let's see, let's get some 12 or something like that. And let's carve some wrinkles. To carve the wrinkles, I'm gonna turn off the symmetry, right? Because at this point here, we're gonna start adding some character to it. And obviously the bigger forms are gonna have to make it symmetrical and everything. The only thing I need symmetrical is just for the pores themselves. I wanna be able to cover everything. So what I was talking about, like when I was talking mentioning the connecting the dots, is this. So for example, if I go to this area here and I see those little pores, I'm gonna start connecting them. From this, gonna go to this one, gonna go to that one. And then if it's changing the direction too much, I'm gonna start connecting the next ones here. So this one goes to this one and to that one, this one. And then in parallel, I can actually connect some more in there, right? But making sure that they actually follow a certain line, kind of like trying to connect to the next one, right? And then you can break up again. And then you can do this again, like in parallel as well. And you can create like those multiple little lines that when you look from a distance, it looks like kind of like similar to a single line, but they actually multiple them. And then you can even go a little bigger. You know, it's like go to your brush a little bit deeper than that. Something like that. Connect to that one, this one, that one. So at the end, you end up like with stuff like this. You can actually get like a little bit of diagonal and start another line, for example, from here. Oh, what did I do? Let's switch to intensity, sorry. So connect from this one, for example, get a line from here to here, and then fade it away. And then later you can like just start adding more and more of them and create a little bit more of a interesting network and shapes in there. But you start by actually connecting some of the pores, you know. And then for everything we're gonna do from this point on, we're gonna be thinking about that. For example, like around this area here, if I want to add a little bit of those wrinkles that happen sometimes underneath the nose, I can do the same stuff. So I can connect this guys here to this guy. And then this line I can actually connect to this one. And then bring around here. So like just connect some of them, because like it's almost like you don't notice it directly, but there is something that makes more natural, especially when it's rendered, right? Like you you render those things and it looks more organic because it's actually doing something that the skin is actually trying to do, you know, it's like in real life, right? Which is like breaking up where there's no resistance, right? Or least resistance. So it's like where the pores are, it's where the breakup's gonna happen more easily. So that kind of stuff. Right, and then obviously you can always pick one that's going to be the hero one, right? Because if you do everything at the same level, sometimes you get like it's a very boring effect, right? But then you pick like, let's say one here, this is going to be the hero one, and I'm going to dig a little bit deeper than the other ones. And then I can pick another one here as a hero as well. And then the other ones can be just secondary stuff, like that. And that's basically going to be the approach for everything else you're going to do. You know, it's like make sure that you keep like the pressure when you're sculpting, like adding variation to it, right? So you're going to carve some of them deeper, some of them are going to be shallower, some are going to be parallel, some of them are going to have to break up. It's always like trying to avoid things like twinning too much or making things too parallel and too like you know, in patterns, right? Anything you can do to break those patterns is good. For example, like I could have gone like completely parallel with those lines, but I added like, you know, there's a little Y shape in there that breaks it up. And then this one cuts in a different direction slightly, you know, anything that actually can add some variation that's going to be across the board for anything you do in the skin. And then another thing that we're going to be doing, probably tomorrow, we're going to be sculpting more like lips and things like that, but we can start doing here so you can see. I'm gonna just switch off my my lazy mouse for now, and then when it comes like to the transition between the pores themselves in here and then the lips, I'm gonna just smooth it out just slightly right there. And there's a little pass that I normally do that's just like creating those micro lines, and those ones they might look a little mechanical at first. Let's just turn back here. Let's see. So sub, let's get a little bit more intensity and make it smaller. Let's see how small I can get with them. Okay, something like that. So now it's symmetrical, right? So I'm gonna do symmetrical all the way here, and I'm gonna try to do like semi-parallel, right? But sometimes I just cut a little bit more of diagonal like that. And I changed a little bit of the length of them. So I can do this, and then tomorrow we're gonna start blending more towards the pores themselves. But we're gonna be doing a lot of those little lines all the way across.
Hey, Chris.
Yes.
Hey, I'm just wondering if you're using one pore brush consistently for the whole face, why not make variations for the cheeks, the forehead?
Oh, this is, yeah, you can do anything. I mean, like, you mean like to create an array that's just custom for those areas?
Yeah.
Yeah, you
like
can.
The differences, you know, because the forehead pores are slightly different to the cheeks.
Yes, exactly. The chin as well, you know. I normally like I tweak them like manually, and I add the variations like to make it look like they are different from the other ones, but they are in fact the same pores, just like with different intensities. And then sometimes with a little sculpting on top of it. But definitely, like you're gonna find like different types of skin, right? Like especially like when you get to arms and things like that, it's so different from the face.
Yeah.
And you can definitely add like you know, it's like create a collection of them, you know, for sure.
Yeah. And what do you feel are the benefits of doing it like, you know, one by one individually?
Oh, it's just
like tiling the whole thing.
Oh, tiling is that problem that you know, it's like sometimes it gets a little too mechanical, right? I mean, like so like my favorite thing when I was doing like those portraits was to sculpt manually, because there was no formula I could find that would give me the randomness that I wanted, other than sculpting the randomness myself. But as you can tell, I mean, like this one here, I just added a bunch of you know, it's like arrays basically. And as long as I keep like in mind that I have to add some randomness on top of that pass, that should work as well, you know? I mean, like I definitely have to go here and incorporate, for example, some directionality. You know, it's like some of those things going to start sliding and stretching. For example, like when I was sculpting the Stan Winston portrait, that basically like he's smiling. So a couple of them I actually had to, you know, it's like I can do it manually right here to show you. But
Like
some of those things, yeah, kind of like, you know, add some direction, you know, it's like it kind of like semi wrinkles like this, kind of like,
for sure.
to add like some of the stretch, you know. But
It's
again,
tough,
like,
right? Like skin is so complex. Like
very
in every
complex.
different part of the face, it changes. You know.
Exactly.
So
Yeah, it's not easy, and all you can do is like I said, like try to paint an impression of what that is, right? Because it is very complex. Like,
because ultimately it's kind of how it reads from a distance, right? So
yes,
it's about how you make light react with the surface.
Exactly.
So I feel like it's about trying to get that texture right. And I think it's like, you know, earlier you was talking about leather, saying about that leather texture.
Yeah.
It's weird because actually in some close-ups of skin, it kind of does look like leather. It's strange, right?
Yeah, it's kind of like a leather made out of jello, right? Like it's so translucent.
It's like a shiny, oily leather. Yeah.
It's incredible how shiny it is. And to get that to look like jello, like from up close, but then look more solid from a distance, right? It's that balance between like, okay, it's like, is the micro displacement working, or like how far can I go with that, right? But I mean, like when I do my portraits, I do tests, like render tests up to a distance like this one, for example, right? And if I can get this to read like realistic in the renders, I'm very happy. You know, it's like I don't need to go like this close to show off. But
for sure,
But I mean, like if I can go to this distance and then the macro displacement actually it's actually working very nicely, I'm happy with it as well, of course. But it's always like a matter of like how far you're gonna push, right? Like if you're doing a portrait that's gonna be printed, for example, and it's gonna be like I don't know, like 1 meter by 1 meter, right? You're gonna have to make sure that you have enough detail in there. But it's really like how far you're gonna be pushing that stuff.
Yeah. No, that's great. I have one more question as well, just real quick. You know, with HD geometry, like I've never used it before, so I'm just wondering, like, so say you're like in normal geometry mode,
okay,
and you're at the highest subdiv, right? And you've got like, and you've just come out of HD, and you've created a layer, and you've done some stuff on a layer, and then you go back into HD. Does that affect anything? That layer can be turned on and off again still?
I think like any layers created outside of HD, they work independently from the HD, you know. But it's something like I never use layers at all when I use HD.
Oh, really?
So because I don't trust layers in general with ZBrush, you know, it's like not even like, for example, like if I'm doing a pass, like something for a production, right? And I have like to do like veins, for example, and some people are gonna do the veins like in a different layer or something. I rather just start with a fresh model, subdivide, and just get the veins sculpted and give that as a separate set of maps to the look dev artists, so they can actually plug and you know, and mix with it. Then actually controlling with layers, I just don't trust it. I mean, like there's this problem. Sometimes you add some color in the layer, and then everything gets messed up.
It's definitely it's destructive, isn't it? It's not a non-destructive.
It really, it's a mess, but I hope they do some more work, you know. It has a ton of potential. I mean, like I really hope like at some point, like they just like stop adding new features and just like really
fix the old ones.
Just fix all this amazing stuff. They have such a solid you know, base to start with. Like just the HD geometry itself, man, just like, you know, tweaking it and adding more features and stuff. Oh my god, that stuff would be amazing.
I don't know if you saw the new update they're bringing out, like the new ZBrush. They're doing like you can sculpt in the UV morph.
You can sculpt in the UV? No, I haven't seen
this.
So
you know when you morph it into like the flat UVs?
Yes.
You can actually sculpt onto that.
That's amazing.
Morph it back, yeah. Which I feel like for skin will be quite useful if you wanted to drag pores around, you know.
That's quite amazing. And then you morph back, and then it just
it's there,
wraps around. That's awesome. Yeah, I haven't seen this one. It's like a preview they have up.
In the ZBrush Summit, I think they were showing some.
Oh, I didn't.
New stuff.
Yeah, I wasn't there, man. And I watched parts of it this year, but I wish I was there.
Cheers, man. I'll let you get back to teaching anyway.
That's awesome. Thanks, man. Yeah, so I'm gonna start like just you know, adding those little micro wrinkles in here, but then from time to time I'm gonna pick some of them and then make a little longer. So like I said, like, you know, always pick a few of them like to be the heroes in there. And then all this stuff I'm gonna start like mixing with the pores later on, right? Because at this point here, I'm working everything symmetrical for those little guys, right? Everything's symmetrical there. But then at some point, I'm going to turn off the symmetry, and then I'm going to start connecting like things like that. And then getting some lines crossing. And, you know, it's like all of this combined with bumps and, you know, it's like around the muzzle, around the chin and all those areas going to have plenty of bumps, right? Like they're going to be breaking up this even surface in there, right? And so that's going to be fun to do. Let's see how we're doing with the time here. Let's see. 11:20. So let's do something here. Let's see if we can do it. I'd be a little tight, but let's try this. So I'm going to get out of HD. So we're going to press A outside, right? I'm going to get out of it. Now I have that. And then, so let's export this model. The base mesh, let's export this one to Maya. Let's see, head, let's do head, UV1 for now. And let's check this model here. So let's go to Maya and hide this guy. Let's import a new one. Oh, it's rendering in the background here. Let me just cancel it. Add UV. All right. So let's do a little tweaking in this head because I didn't do anything yet. So Windows, Modeling Editor, UV Editor. So let's just do a little bit of unfolding in here. Let's do the whole thing. Let's see what happens. So tools, actually not tools, this is under modify. Man, they keep changing things. Tool, I think it's tools, isn't it? Tools unfold. Okay, cool. Let's do unfold. Oh, no, not in tools. Sorry, is it modified? It is unfold. Okay, Control U. Cool. Let's just unfold this one just to make sure that things are conforming to the new model. So now things changed a little bit. Probably have to adjust this. Yeah, let's not deal with this right now. I'm actually gonna adjust this later. Let's use the UVs the way I have them and see what we get. So a couple of things I'm gonna do here. I'm gonna just delete this one back and let's export our first maps here. I think we have enough time. So I just exported the base mesh, right? So a few things I'm gonna do to export my displacement map here. The first one is that I have to make sure that I do this very stupid procedure here. That actually, just to guarantee that the model is going to export the displacements correctly. So first I'm going to go to the subdivision level 2. So I'm going to subdivide once, right? Because this is the model I normally use in Maya. I don't use like the subdivision level 0 or 1, right? I use subdivision level 2 because I actually put the hair, I groomed the hair on top of the mesh itself. And I'd rather have a little bit more dense mesh so I can select the faces more easily and stuff. And also because the hair is more conform to the surface this way. So I'm going to export this one as mid-res. So let's do this. That's going to be head MR, so mid-res 1. And I'm going to go to the lowest level. I'm going to export it again. That's LR, so low resolution. And now I'm going to go to the morph target. Going to click store. If you have anything stored, so delete it. So I'm going to delete. So store, switch, import. Those 3 steps have to be done in sequence. And I'm going to import the lowest resolution. So again, like the steps here, like if you have any morph target, you first, like you export your display, or your base mesh, like the lowest resolution, right? You export the mid resolution as well. And then you go to your morph target, delete anything you have. You're gonna press store, switch, import, and then get the lowest. This is important because like it kind of makes no sense, but that's something that I had to call Affair, and Affair told me to do this way, and actually it works. Is that in the past we had this problem that you know, you're baking the displacements, and some of the mid-resolution forms are being baked within the map as well, even though sometimes you just sculpted just pores and stuff. So that way it guarantees that it exports just the difference between what's the base mesh and what's writing on top of it, right? So that's important to do. At this point here, you actually don't go up in resolution anymore. You just stay right there. The only thing you're going to have to do here, I'm going to save my file finally. So let's save it so I don't lose anything. And because like there is a possibility that ZBrush is going to corrupt the file in there during the export. Maybe not. Sometimes it doesn't. But just make sure you're good. So I'm going to just save right before you export the maps. So as you can tell, I didn't go up in resolution, right? I'm still in the lowest. I already did my import. So let's go to Z plugin, and then let's go to the multi-map exporter. And I'm gonna export just the displacement for now. The settings for that I'm using here, I have 5 UDIMs, and I'm cranking the map size. You see that we have the presets, but the last preset is 496. You can crank manually to 892, or 8192, so that's 8K. And then for the export options, the first thing you're gonna do, you're gonna look at the file names and make sure that you have TIFF at the top. And this one by default is something like this, that, you know, it's kind of like a ZBrush default. But if you keep clicking on it, you click until you switch to UDIM. That's basically what we're looking for. So TIFF, overwrite, and then UDIM right there. And then for the rest of the settings, this is important because that's exactly what we just did. We just brought the morph target, right? And we did the whole procedure of switch. So we have to use this button on. That's the whole magic. The map border by default is 4. I actually increased to 10 in here. And that means like if you have enough distance between your islands in Maya, right? Like when you look at the little isles in there, if you have enough distance, if the pieces of the UVs are not touching each other too close, you can use like a bigger map border here, which is basically what I'm doing, just to prevent any seam to happen, right? And then in the displacement map options, I'm gonna be using, instead of subdivision level 1, I'm gonna export from subdivision level 2. Because remember, I exported a mid resolution that was the subdivision level 2, the one I'm gonna be using in Maya. So I have to tell ZBrush to generate just a difference between level 2 and all the way up, instead of like from 1 and all the way up. So that's the difference we're gonna be doing here. And I'm gonna be using adaptive. I'm gonna crank the DP subpix all the way. No smooth UV, totally fine. By default, ZBrush uses 0.5 in here, but we're gonna be using 0. Because that's basically what Arnold expects by default. And also because we are using 32 bits EXR. If it was a 16-bit maps, this would not work because 16 would not go below 0, right? You would kind of like stay on there, but the 32 bits, you can go below 0. So negative values are totally fine. And that's basically what we have for settings. So let's export our first map here. And oh, before I do this, let me just rename my subtool. So it's already renamed with the LR1, which is basically like when I imported it, you already renamed the subtool. So I'm gonna keep that name. And then if it was a different one, I would rename it because the map's gonna be named after that. So, and then I'm gonna save always inside of source images, those folders that we created with Maya, if you remember. So source images, and then we're gonna export them here. And that should take about, I would say like 6 minutes. So we're gonna wait a little bit, and we're gonna be preparing our scene meanwhile in Maya to receive that. So
Chris, just a quick question.
Yeah.
Sorry, like at this point, I'm even thinking of perhaps starting a new project. Like I did what you asked me, like to basically go in HD. What I did is I used the polygroups to be able to export, to bake in the, how'd you call it, the high res details.
Yes.
So I've exported all of that in regular subtools, and I sort of scaled everything back using the coordinates of the real size, the proper sized
world scale. Yeah.
Exactly. So I've moved everything in place, but there's like a tiny gap in between each subtool, like a couple millimeters.
Yeah, you have to leave you have to leave a little buffer. Yeah. Oh man.
But when I move it to I feel like when I move it back to, how'd you call it? When I take my proper base mesh in HD and reproject, either I'm not doing it properly, but I'm not getting the same level of detail.
Yeah, and you have the same.
Because go ahead.
You have the same amount of polygons and everything, and it's not transferring.
I don't think I have the same amount of polygon, like basically because
but close enough, I mean.
Yes, perhaps that's what I'm doing wrong. Perhaps I need to raise the amount of polygons on the base mesh to basically, yeah, I'll try that, but otherwise I'll scrap it and I'll start again.
Oh man, like if there is anything I can help you with, I mean, like, because I know it's partially my fault as well, because I gave you a mesh that was kind of broken.
No, but it's I think when I imported it, I did double check that it was the right scale. Because for some reason when I import the subtool, depending on how I do it, the subtool will be smaller than my base mesh or bigger. But then what I ended up doing is double checking with Z plugins with Scale Master to make sure that everything is in the proper scale. But yeah, I just need to figure that part out.
I would trust Maya better, actually, to do anything related to scale. Yeah, the scale in Maya just brings straight to ZBrush, you know, because it's so much easier to trust whatever it's you know, it's like you set up in Maya. I just I don't know, man. Because ZBrush is this mix of 2.4, 2.5D and 3D application. I tend to trust like in a real 3D application more most of the time. But yeah, if you can do that, though. But you let me know, man, if you need any help like projecting stuff or anything I can help to save you some time, I can do that.
I mean, if you don't mind, sorry.
The actual little gap that you get getting things out of HD once you clone it, there's a little tutorial by Ask ZBrush. I think it's like 17 or whatever. That there's like some little like creasing that you have to do.
Creasing, yeah,
before you export out, because otherwise you will get that little gap if you don't give the buffer. If you want, I can pass you the tutorial and then you can take a look after. But there's a couple little steps that you have to do to make sure that you export perfect. Or you want to select the subtool, the little UDIM part that you want to export, then you grow a little bit more and give it a buffer so it overlaps each other way. You have to do like a little extra step for that.
Okay, yeah, because I do notice that some of the edges are slightly rounded.
Yeah.
So basically, you make it crisp so that like it matches perfectly. Is that it?
Yeah, I don't remember exactly all the steps, but I'll post it in the chat soon.
Yeah,
awesome.
All right, man. So what I'm doing here right now, I just imported the mesh. I didn't import the base mesh, like the low resolution. I import the medium resolution, right? So from 17,000 polys, I'm using the 69,000 polys right now. And then the first thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna go to the properties of the object. So Control A, right? And it's gonna open this tab here. And then if you scroll down to the tab where it says Arnold, we're going to tweak a few things here to be able to set up for displacement rendering. The first one I'm going to tweak is this one here, is the SSS set name. I normally give a name that's always the same, shared SSS. You can put any name in there. This one is important because if you're rendering multiple objects with subsurface scattering in each one of them, this one guarantees that there is a perfect blend between those objects. Otherwise, you're going to get some kind of like darker lines between different objects with different subsurface scattering. So this one guarantees that actually the transitions are very nice and smooth, you know. So that's the first one. For the subdivision, I'm gonna click Catmull Clark. And the iterations are gonna start with, I can start with 3 or 4. Let's do 4. It's gonna take more time, a little longer, obviously, but you know, 4 is a good one. And then for adaptive space, I'm gonna be using the object. And for the smoothing, no smooth, so basically like linear. Remember, we didn't turn on any smooth like during the export for ZBrush. So that's basically what I'm gonna change. So Catmull Clark, iterations can be 3 or 4, and then object, and then linear. For the attributes, I'm not gonna change anything. So basically like the 0 value is 0, like we just set in ZBrush, right? So it's matching that one. And auto bump is that magic button I mentioned that, you know, it's like anything that's not gonna be considered during the subdivision itself. If there's any more detail that's not being represented, Arnold's gonna shift to a pseudo kind of bump map at render time. It's not gonna show you the bump map or anything, it's just gonna be at render time. So I'm gonna click that one and leave it the way it is. So this model here is ready to receive the displacement maps, right? But we have to set up the shader network. Let me just check here and make sure that my Arnold settings have enough to do that. So let's see, ambient filter, everything is the same that we set up last time. Let's just turn on the auto bump in SSS here. It's gonna increase some time to render, but we wanna see it. And then let's bring those maps. Let's see if they're ready. It's probably still exporting. Let's see how much longer it's gonna take. Hopefully it's the last, or maybe the one before the last. Let's see. OpenXR, let's see if this is the last. I hope it is. No, still another one. So let's see how it's going here. Let's see my maps. Let's see here. Personal source images. Let's see how many we got. Yeah, it started exporting at 11:31. It's 11:36. So that's being 5 minutes. Exported 3 maps so far. So it should go to 8 minutes, I believe. And you see like 8K maps, they're about like 160 megs, right? They're pretty big. So let's try, let's set up this whole thing here already. So let's assign that same shader network that we assigned last week. Remember, like, was a very simple one that we just set up with some subsurface, right? The same shader, basically. I'm gonna assign to this guy. The only difference is that we're gonna be plugging the displacement map now. I'm gonna click the top node here. I'm gonna go to graph, input and output. So it cleans up, so it only shows this. And then if you click this node here, now you can plug your displacement map, right? So you can either click this node or you can click this one and then, where is it? Right here. Basically, like if you have the node selected, you can just like click this one and it goes back to, you know, the main node, which is this one. So I'm gonna click this one or that one, doesn't matter. And I'm gonna click File. And I'm gonna click this little arrow in here, just to go forward. And then I'm gonna turn off my filter. So let's minimize this one. So I'm gonna turn off my filter. And going down here, up to you guys, if you have less memory in your computer, you can keep like auto-generate TX textures. But just remember that every time you render, ZBrush is gonna have to process it. You're gonna have to update every time you change the texture. So that's why I keep it off, because I want everything updated as I bring new maps straight away. So you see, like, I have still RGB for the color space, but remember we tweaked this in I think like 2 or 4 lessons ago, 2 or 3 of them, to actually have this switching automatically when we bring like HDRs or when we bring like EXRs. So this should switch to raw automatically here. So let's try this. So let's bring the image itself. You can bring 1. It's still loading, right? We're gonna have to reload. So it's still like processing the background. It's gonna just open it. And then here is gonna show me just one texture, right? But Arnold's smart enough to create a tag for it. So if Arnold identifies like a 1001 in the name like this, he adds a tag if you switch to the UV tiling mode. So if I click this one here, I can select UDIM to match the naming that we gave in ZBrush, right? And then when I do that, you see like you already found 4 tiles. There is still one being processed, right? And then from 1001 is switched to UDIM tag right here, right? So that means now it's gonna load all the files that are part of that. But we're gonna have to wait just a second, just until we get the last file processed, which should be the next one. We already got 4 of them. And then ZBrush should be processing the last one right now. And normally if you leave like ZBrush alone, you don't do anything, it should take like, yeah, between 6 and 8 minutes. But because I'm poking around with Maya and all this stuff, like maybe it's gonna take a little longer, but it shouldn't be too bad. We're kind of like 10 minutes over, but I still wanna get this rendered just to show. So it's gonna take just a little bit more. Like I said before, I like having like renders happening like straight away, because you know that's my measure. Like, you know, if things gonna, you know, I'm just gonna create like iterations from this point on. Let's do this. Let's see. I'm gonna have to reload this. Let's go, ZBrush. One more. One more. Yeah, man, like in production, I mean, like exporting those maps can take forever when you're working with non-HD. And even with HD, I mean, like if you have a model that has like 30 UDIMs, still a good chunk of time you have to wait, you know. It's like you extrapolate, right? I'm exporting 5 maps, like 8 minutes or so. But if you have like, instead of 5, we have 50, right? That's an hour and a half. All right, let's see. There is a brush. I need to see how much time. And one thing you're gonna notice is that, oh, there you go, 13. So that was a little longer than expected. It's because I was poking around. It should be around, I think, 8 minutes. Not too bad either. So, okay, so all exported. Let's go back to ZBrush, to Maya, and let's reload this. So reload, it's already there, right? I already found it. So let's do a quick render test. First thing you're gonna do, let's turn off the HDRI for now. I can just switch it off. This one here, eliminate by default. And then the softbox, actually gonna increase the intensity. Let's do maybe like 4 here. Maybe it's a little strong, but let's see what happens. And maybe the best angle would be something from a glancing angle like that. Let's see what happens. Yeah, this guy, I'm still looking for his personality. I'm not happy with the model at all at this point, but hopefully I'm gonna get somewhere. The struggle is real, man. I see you guys struggling with stuff, but it's, yeah, we all struggle. Let's see. Takes a little bit just to load those maps into memory, so.
Hey, Chris.
Yes.
I just have a question.
Yeah.
You're doing all the skin details already, and you say you're not happy with the model yet. How will you not destroying the detail when you're still working on the major forms?
Yeah, at this point here, I mean, like I have to move on with the class, so I have no choice, but I have to keep going with it. But as long as I'm careful with how I move stuff around at this point, for example, like if it's like broad moves, I mean, I would say like that the volumes themselves, I'm kind of like close to what I would like to have. But then there are certain things I want to change, like a mid-resolution detail and stuff like that, right? And even like the bigger forms, if I move like with broad brushes, I should be fine, I think. But yeah, if I move like stuff like start stretching without caring too much with anything, then I might get into trouble. Like, okay, I'm gonna have to resculpt that entire area just sculpted, you know. But yeah, I kind of like I got like against the wall because I have to keep moving with the class, so there's no way I can stop at this point. So let's just let's take a look at this area here. Let's see if I can just like zoom in, something like this. Let's see if we can see any pores in there. Oh, I got something. Again, like very, very even, right? Because they're just, you know, we don't have all the bumps and everything else, but at least they're being rendered. So it's coming through. Just a matter of like giving some love to the model from this point on. Like, let's say if we zoom in here, let's get like a glancing angle again. Something like that. Yeah, I mean, like the whole thing about changing the model at this point, it's kind of the same principle as the with blend shapes, you know. The model has to be consistent enough that if you change the forms, like to create the Fisher expression and stuff like that, it's not going to be completely destroyed. So when you pull the forms, you have to pull them like carefully, right? So they kind of like move all together in a very broad way. So there you go. So we got some pores in there, and because we have the auto bump, right? So it's gonna create like this little, you know, it's like the little dot's gonna get a little bit more red inside and all that stuff. But then once you have this combined with macro detail, we're gonna add tomorrow some macro detail and probably start playing with the specular map as well. Then we're gonna start getting more and more life to the skin, you know. So I think it's gonna get better. Oh, and actually tomorrow I think is a good opportunity to actually get my latest skin shader and break down the whole shader network and show you guys all the values, everything that's plugged in there, and we can just start exploring that, but without like going overboard, like in using maps that we didn't paint just yet. So kind of like just keep it like bare bones, like all the values that I use, but just like plug in the maps we have, which is gonna be tomorrow probably just like the displacement and the specular map and the macro displacement. And then we're gonna keep like every day increasing and adding more maps to it until we get something that looks cool. But I think that's it for today, guys. We covered a lot of stuff, and start doing some exercise with the pores, you know. Just remember, like this weekend, we're gonna have the first reviews, right? It's gonna happen at 9 in the morning and at 9 at night here. So everybody has the chance to be part of it, right? I want to be able to catch you guys like in different times around the world, I believe. And then just be careful about like the size of the files, because since I'm going to be downloading a bulk of all the files, make sure, for example, if you want me to look at pore detail, for example, if it's like HD stuff, you know, you can save like screenshots and I can just like look at the image itself, right? Instead of like sending like an HD geometry model, because that's going to have like over 1 gigabyte sometimes, and it's kind of hard. So for example, if it's pore detail and stuff like that, I would rather have like just like screenshots. And if it's just like, if it's the model with like a primary and secondary forms, then send me the ZBrush file. I don't mind, and I can just like explore it and do some sculpting in real time, and you know, it's like some, you know, things I can observe in it, and anything goes. Actually, just be careful with the size of the files. But then if you want to send me the files in ZBrush or screenshots for paint over, I don't mind doing either. You know, I can do the paint over in Photoshop or sculpt in ZBrush. Up to you guys. But thank you so much. I hope you're enjoying. I'm enjoying so far, and I'm still in trouble with my model, but I'm gonna get out of this hole eventually.
Really, thank you, Chris.
Thank you, guys. And thanks for all the tips. Every single one of those classes, we learn new stuff. So thanks for sharing, and really appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
Thank you,
Have
Chris.
a great one.
Thanks, man.
Thank you, Chris. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.